Good morning, YouTube world. I'm Scott Ryder. I'm here in Irvine, California, and thanks for tuning into my YouTube channel, IWNQ, I Will Never Quit. I'm probably as excited as I've ever been because today I'm here with John Lehr, the CEO of the Parkinson's Foundation. And I've said it before, but I want to say it again. I've chosen to hitch my wagon to the Parkinson's Foundation because, in my estimation, there is no other organization working in the world of Parkinson's that helps people with Parkinson's like the Parkinson's Foundation. They not only do research, but they make my life better on a daily basis. And I think that makes them unique. So, John, thank you for being here. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Scott, and I appreciate you doing this for us.
That's a privilege. Hey, how long have you been in your current position as the CEO of the Parkinson's Foundation?
Yeah, so I was hired and I began my job in January 2017. The Parkinson's Foundation was the result of a merger of two smaller organizations into one national organization.
Yep.
And when that merger occurred, they wanted to hire a new CEO, so I ended up being privileged to have that job.
That's great. Well, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Prior to your being in your current position as the CEO of PF, did you personally know anybody with Parkinson's?
Yes, I did. So when I was a child, we used to eat Thanksgiving dinner with a family, neighbors of ours, and the grandmother of that family had Parkinson's. And so her daughter got very involved with the Parkinson's Foundation in Miami.
Really?
And so when I took the job, I heard from her immediately saying, hey, you remember that I used to be very involved with the Miami-based organization? And I said, yes, I do remember that. So it was a long-term connection to Parkinson's, and so in many ways it was returning to something I was very familiar with in my childhood.
Do you remember, I'm curious, how old were you when you were having Thanksgiving dinner?
Oh, it started when I was like 5 years old, and we did it every year until I was in my 20s.
Something I've always wondered, and you'd be a great person to ask, was when you saw that person with Parkinson's, a person like me that shakes a little bit, was it kind of almost scary to you in a way?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I was very fond of this woman. She was kind of like a second grandmother to me. And, I had seen from my childhood a number of people who were older and, struggling with other diseases than just with aging. So from a young age, it was not something that worried me or concerned me. So, I understand certain people do, and it takes a little time to
Sure.
get used to it.
If you look back upon your past and survey your life, can you think of one piece of advice that somebody gave you that has meant the most to you over your career to this point?
Yes. The best piece of advice I ever got was listen more, talk less. And I think that's universally applicable, but I think in the current job that I have, my job is to listen to people. People with Parkinson's, their caregivers, other people who are affected by the community. It's only through listening that you can figure out how to help people. And if you're the one always talking and not listening, then you're not going to get to the right solutions.
I'm curious, having been in your current position now for a while, if you were diagnosed with Parkinson's, what's the first thing you would do today?
The first thing I do would be to contact the Parkinson's Foundation and ask them where is the best place to get care, what are the things that I should do, how should I tell my family, how should I tell people I work with, give me the guidance and the benefit of others that have gone through this before so that I'm not trying to blaze this journey on my own.
And those resources are all there and ready. They're available, am I right?
Absolutely. So we have a helpline, so that would be the first place I would probably call. And then I would probably check out the website. And because this is who I am, I would probably pick up the phone and call someone at the foundation and say, I live in Washington, D.C., or I live in New York sometimes. Where should I go? Who's the best person to talk to?
So, John, I visited the Miami office, and I know you split your time between Miami in New York and live in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
But I visited the Miami office a while back, and I met a lot of your staff. And repeatedly, unsolicited, they told me time and time again, they said, John Lehr is the most approachable guy. One of your staffers told me, I won't mention her name, but she said I could call John Lehr at 2 a.m. in the morning. He'd take my call, and he'd talk to me and help me in whatever way. Is that just who you are? Did somebody teach you that?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
So I think it comes from certainly observing people over time, and I think the people who are most helpful to others are those who are most accessible. And I also learned it from my grandfather. My grandfather had a very storied career in Chicago, and the thing I remember my mother saying about my grandfather was that when he walked into the office building, he knew everybody's name, from the security guard all the way up through, the ranks of the company. And he made a point of always treating everybody the same way, because he grew up in the south side of Chicago with not 2 pennies in his pocket, and he learned that the best way through life was just to treat everybody the same.
I don't know if you've ever thought about it from this perspective. I've thought about it for you from this perspective. But you're the CEO of an organization that impacts a lot of people's lives. When you think about it, somebody is diagnosed with Parkinson's every 9 minutes. And so that's a lot of people. So what you do every day matters. And there's the trickle-down impact, because it not only is the person with Parkinson's, it's caregivers, family members, relatives. What's the biggest challenge you have in that role?
So, first of all, it's an awesome responsibility. I wake up and think about Parkinson's 24 hours a day, really. Even sometimes I wake up from sleep and I'm like, okay, I have a new idea. So I would say that, the key is really placing people with Parkinson's first, thinking about people with Parkinson's, and what we can do to help them in their daily lives. That's the first and foremost, just to ease the lives of people who have this disease. But second, to think about the future and what we can do, and what resources we can bring, so that in 10, 15, 20 years, not only is the course of the disease easier, but we're on a path to solving the disease.
So if I were a really good interviewer, I would remember what the next question is. But I have Parkinson's disease, so I don't even remember what I had for breakfast. So I'm going to look at my cheat sheet here.
Okay.
But if you and I were sitting here 5 years from now, describe how you think the Parkinson's Foundation would look compared to today.
So I think we would have filled in a lot of the gaps in the United States where we're not now. We'll have more centers of excellence. We'll have more people exploring different avenues of research, because we will put more resources to it. We'll probably have more staff providing programs to people across the country. I'd like to see that some of the indices that we're looking at, improved activities of daily living, improved quality of life, we'd be able to measure that on both a macro level and a micro level, and be able to show an uptick in both of those things. I'd like to see that some of the research that we're funding in the basic science is leading to breakthroughs, that's also leading to avenues of better medications, better therapeutics. That's a lot in 5 years, but I'm hopeful that with the energy that we as an entire community are bringing to this, that we'll have made a lot of progress between now and then.
Wow, I think you've answered that question before.
No, actually, I have not.
No, that was a great, you had that down, that's good. So John, I don't know if you know this or not, but I've been in your personal office in Miami, and I actually sat at your desk, much to the surprise of your staff. I just sat down and kind of helped myself to your desk, just being silly. And I was struck by something, because if I were an outsider looking in, I think John Lehr, CEO of the Parkinson's Foundation, it's a big nonprofit. I mean, it's an important nonprofit. And I had, in my mind, would envision this huge office with oak walls and fancy furniture. So don't take me wrong, your office was incredibly nice. It was neat, incredibly tidy, much tidier than anything I would ever have. But it was by no means luxurious, and I guess I'd describe it as modest. Do you have an interest in having a more glamorous type office? Does that interest you?
Absolutely not. In fact, that office is too big, and it makes me nervous about how big it is.
And it's not that big, trust me.
And so sometimes in New York, our offices are tight. So I have said to both people in New York and Miami, that office is yours to use when I'm not there. Please feel free to use it. We would never want to invest too much in the accoutrements of an office. Our goal is to put as much money into care and research for the benefit of people with Parkinson's. So we don't spend money on things that are superfluous in my mind.
Accoutrements and superfluous. I'm going to look both those up. Hey, John, what makes you laugh?
I love comedy. I do. I love stand-up comedy. So on the weekends, what you'll find me is watching a lot of stand-up comedians, both on Netflix and elsewhere. I like the absurdity of life, and life doesn't ever go the way you think it's going to go. So finding humor in that is, I think, the best medicine forward. So, and I come from a big family, 6 kids. I'm the youngest of 6. I learned early on that having a good sense of humor when you have 5 older brothers and sisters is really a key to survival in life. So laughing a lot, laughing often is really is very important to me.
John, I've wondered about this. I've had the pleasure of interacting with lots of your staff, and I've said this before, but I think it's important to say again, and I get emotional when I say this. I'm just blown away by the fact that there's this whole group of people that go to work every day, and really, whether they're in accounting or the person that answers the phone or promotions or whatever the case is, they're really all working for one cause, to make my life better. Somebody like me with PD and other people like me with PD. So my question is, if you were gathering all your staff in the room together and you were going to say, look, the single most important thing that you must do, a universal thing that applies to everybody, to really be an effective member here at the Parkinson's Foundation, what would you tell them?
I would say you're here because you care about people and you want to make a difference in the lives of people, and that you understand that people with Parkinson's have a tough disease and a lot of challenges, but they have a lot of life to live, and our goal is to help them live that life to the fullest. I really believe a lot in culture and hiring the right people, hiring the right team, the right staff. And when we have a prospective candidate for a position, we're always looking at, are they positive? It's the number one component, because we have to be positive not only in our daily lives, but we have to be positive for people in the community.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Being positive, I buy into that wholeheartedly.
Sure, absolutely.
Is there anything that, in anticipation of our little exchange, our meeting, our time together, that you thought I should have asked you, or that you wished I would have asked you?
No, I was actually very impressed with the questions that you put together. I think the one question I always want to say that I get from people is there hope? And I believe very much in hope. I believe in optimism. And as you mentioned earlier, there's a whole community of people who are working behind the scenes on research, on better care, on empowerment, engagement, education. It's truly an army of people who are working to help the 1 million Americans and the 10 million people worldwide who have Parkinson's. I'd like to see that army grow. I'd like to see more resources for Parkinson's. And I think with more resources, we'll be able to do more things. And I'm delighted by the questions that you asked me, because I think they get right to the heart of the matter, which is this is a tough disease, and we need to help people who have this disease. But with the right tools, the right resources, people can live a very good, long, and happy life.
Yeah, I like to tell people nobody ever dies from Parkinson's.
Right.
They might die from things associated with it or caused by it, but to the best of my knowledge, nobody's ever died in the history of mankind from Parkinson's disease.
That's right.
So I think that's important. I'm going to share with you something about Parkinson's that I think is sort of interesting, that I think maybe the general public and a lot of people don't really understand, is that if you've seen one Parkinson's person, you've seen one Parkinson's person. It's very different for each person. And what fascinates me is that like right now, I'm pretty good. I had my meds this morning, so I don't really have any tremor right now.
Yep.
But give me about an hour when they start wearing off. But there's so many things that go on the inside of the body with the persons with Parkinson's that somebody can't see.
Right.
And I hope that, I guess what I want to say to the people that are watching the YouTube channel, realize that what you see on the outside doesn't represent even a fraction of what goes on in the inside. I mean, really personal things that I wouldn't even want to share on my YouTube channel.
Right.
But I'm sure that's not anything new to you.
No, what's interesting, when I first joined the Parkinson's Foundation and you start to read the literature, it's often described as a movement disorder. It is a movement disorder, but it's much more than that, as you were just alluding to. It affects all parts of the body, and often the things that are most troubling to people with Parkinson's are the things that you don't see. Certainly the tremors and the gait issues are problematic, but it's the depression, it's the anxiety, it's the sleepless nights, it's the GI issues, and that's just to name a few things. And
GI is a fancy word for constipation. And it is real.
It is real, and if anybody has ever experienced constipation, it's very unpleasant, and it can ruin the quality of your day. So those are things that we don't see, but those are things that we're here to try and solve for people with Parkinson's. Another thing is dry eye. I have one member of our board who suffers from dry eye because of an adverse effect of one of his medications, and it drives him nuts. But nobody would know that. You can't see dry eye, but every time I talk to him, he says we need to do something about dry eye. So we've actually started talking to some researchers who are focused on ophthalmology and ophthalmology research to try and figure that out. And that's the role of the foundation, and that comes from listening. Because if we just assume that this is a movement disorder, we'll focus only on the movement aspects. But when people say, hey, you know what, I wish there was something that we could do for my dry eye or my sense of smell or my loss of my sense of smell or, sleeping 2 hours and then being up for 5 hours. What can we do for those things? Those are the hidden components of this disease.
Sure. Well, John, I just want to thank you. We're here in Irvine, California at the inaugural, the first ever Parkinson's Foundation Volunteer Summit, and it's been a great experience. And having spent a little bit of time with you, I see why your coworkers have such great things to say about you. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Scott. And thanks for kicking off our Volunteer Summit last night with your keynote speech. It was terrific.
It was a privilege. Thank you.